If you've ever lain awake at night doing math in your head, the mortgage, the card balance, the number that never seems to grow fast enough, this story is for you. Because the fear you feel at 2 a.m. was never really about money. It was about something older, something that had nothing to do with numbers at all. Today I want to tell you about a merchant who was asked a single question by a monk with nothing to his name. It was only 7 words. But those 7 words undid a lifetime of counting. We'll get to them. First, you need to understand who this merchant was and why a man with 3 warehouses full of silk still couldn't sleep. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, what's the one money worry that follows you everywhere? The one that shows up even on good days? You might be surprised how many people carry the exact same one, word for word. There was a merchant named Devaram who lived in a river town where the water moved slow and brown and the markets opened before the sun. He sold silk, bolts of it, dyed the color of pomegranate and deep indigo, stacked floor to ceiling in 3 separate warehouses along the docks. Men bowed to him when he passed. Children were told his name the way other towns told the names of kings. But Devaram counted. He counted the way other men breathed, without noticing he was doing it. He counted bolts of silk before sleep and after waking. He counted the coins in his strongbox twice a day, once at dawn and once when the last torch was lit. He counted the debts owed to him and the years until his son would be old enough to inherit the counting. Even in his dreams he counted, and he never once landed on a number that let him stop. His wife, Anong, used to say that he loved silk the way other men loved their children. Carefully, jealously, and with one eye always on how easily it could be taken from him. She wasn't wrong. Devaram had grown up with nothing. His father had died owing money to 3 different men, and Devaram remembered more clearly than his own wedding day the sound of those men's boots on the floor of his childhood home. The particular rhythm of a stranger's footsteps deciding what was and wasn't yours. He had built 3 warehouses so that sound would never come again. But somewhere in the building, he had forgotten to ask himself when enough silk would finally be enough. The first warehouse he had built with his own hands, mixing mortar late into the night after the market closed, too proud to hire the workout and too frightened, still to trust that the coins in his pocket were truly his to spend on labor. The second and third came easier, built by other men's hands while Devaram stood at a distance and watched, arms folded, counting bricks the way he counted everything else. Visitors admired the warehouse's scale. Devaram, walking their aisles alone at night with a single oil lamp, saw only the empty corners. The shelf not yet full, the ledger not yet closed, the year not yet safe. You know this fear. Maybe not with silk. Maybe with a savings account, a job title, a number of followers, a square footage. But you know what it is to build something enormous out of the fear of a much smaller, much older wound. One evening, as the last barges were being loaded before the monsoon season closed the river, a monk arrived at Devaram's gate. He wore a robe the color of clay, worn thin at the shoulders, and he carried nothing but an empty wooden bowl. His name, the guards later said, was Tarek, though no one was certain whether that was the name he was born with or simply the name he answered to that season. Devaram, who gave alms freely because generosity photographed well in a small river town, invited the monk to sit at his table and eat. Tarek accepted and ate slowly and said very little. But as the meal ended, he looked at the 3 warehouses visible through the open window, their doors barred and guarded through the night, and he asked Devaram a question that no one in that town had asked him in 20 years. "Do you have enough?" Devaram laughed. It was, after all, an easy question for a rich man. "Of course," he said. "I could sell everything tomorrow and never work again." But what he didn't know was that Tarek had already noticed something, the way Devaram's hand had gone, without thinking, to the strongbox key hanging at his belt. A man who has enough does not touch the key when someone asks him if he has enough. He touches it when he is afraid the answer is no. "Then tell me," Tarek said, "how much is enough? Name the number." And this is where everything changed, because Devaram opened his mouth to answer and found that in 30 years of counting, he had never once arrived at a number he could name out loud. He had a number for last year. He had a number for the debts owed to him. He did not have a number for enough. He had never needed one, because enough was always the amount just past what he currently had. Remember this detail. It matters later. Devarim did not sleep that night, not because he was poor, because for the first time, he understood he had never once, not for a single hour of his life, believed he had enough. The monk stayed in the town through the rains, sleeping in a modest room above a noodle shop, eating whatever was offered, refusing whatever was more than he needed. Devarim began to seek him out, first out of irritation, then out of something closer to hunger. He would find Tarek near the docks at dawn and ask him questions dressed up as arguments. "You have nothing," Devarim said once. "You have no warehouse, no wife, no son to provide for. It is easy to feel like you have enough when you have nothing to lose." But what he didn't know was that Tarek had once had far more than Devarim. A family estate, a name known 3 provinces over, a life built the same way Devarim's was, brick by brick, fear by fear. Tarek had walked away from all of it not because he lost it, but because one morning he realized the estate did not feel any different from the poverty he had been afraid of his whole life. Both had the same weight in his chest. Both kept him awake. "I did not choose to have nothing," Tarek told him one evening, as they watched the barges return empty-handed through curtains of rain. "I chose to stop needing a wall between myself and fear. The wall was never made of silk or gold. It was made of counting. And this is where everything changed again, more quietly this time." Devarim began, almost against his will, to notice his own hands, how they reached for the strongbox key even in rooms with no one else in them, how he recounted bolts of silk he had counted an hour earlier, as though the number might have changed, as though a different number might finally feel like safety. The monsoon deepened. The river rose high enough to threaten the lowest warehouse, the one nearest the docks, and for 3 days Devarim did not sleep at all, standing guard over sandbags and silk with his sons and his workers, watching the brown water climb toward the door. On the 3rd night, exhausted past fear, past pride, past the performance of being a man who had enough, Devarim sat down in the mud beside the warehouse and wept, not for the silk, which might still be lost, but for the 30 years he had spent guarding it as if it were his own life. It was there that Tarek found him. He did not offer comfort. He sat down in the mud beside him, in his one clay-colored robe, and waited. "Tell me," Devarim finally said, his voice raw. "How do you sleep with nothing?" But this is where the loop closes, where the 7 words finally arrive, the same 7 words Tarek had carried since he was a wealthy man himself, since the morning he understood that no warehouse, however large, could hold what he was actually afraid of losing. Tarek looked at the rising water and at Devarim's ruined hands and said only this: "I stopped asking the water for peace." 7 words, that was all. Not "give away your possessions." Not "poverty is holy." Not a rule, not a trade, not a transaction disguised as wisdom. Just a redirection. Away from the water, away from the number, toward the only place peace had ever actually lived. Devarim sat with that sentence longer than he had sat with any ledger, because he understood finally what it meant. He had spent 30 years asking his warehouses for peace, asking his strongbox for peace, asking the number, whatever it currently was, to finally be large enough to quiet the fear that had followed him since he was a boy listening to boots on the floor. And the water, the silk, the coins, the count, had never once been able to answer that question. It was never built to. He had been asking a wall to love him back. The rains passed. The lowest warehouse flooded anyway, and a portion of the silk was lost, enough to matter, not enough to ruin him. And here is what surprised everyone in the river town, including Devarim himself. He slept that night. Genuinely slept, for the first time in longer than he could remember, with the warehouse door standing open and the strongbox key still hanging useless at his belt. That merchant is you. Every time you refresh your bank balance hoping the number will finally make you feel safe, and it doesn't, and you refresh it again anyway. That merchant is you. Every time you tell yourself you'll relax once you hit a certain figure, knowing somewhere quiet in your chest that the figure moved the moment you got close to it. This is not a story about poverty being virtuous or wealth being sinful. Devarim did not become poor to become peaceful. He simply stopped asking money to do a job money was never built to do. The philosophical thread running under everything Devarim learned has a name older than any bank: attachment. Not attachment in the sense of caring about things. Caring is human, and there is nothing wrong with wanting to provide for the people you love. Attachment here means asking an object outside yourself to resolve a fear that lives inside yourself. It means believing that if the number gets big enough, the fear will finally stop. But fear is not solved by evidence. It is solved by attention, by turning toward the actual wound instead of building higher walls around it. Devarim's warehouses were never the problem. His relationship to them was. The water he had been begging for peace was never going to answer, no matter how high he built the banks around it. This is not a call to abandon your savings account or quit your job tomorrow. Suficiencia, sufficiency, is not a number you reach. It is a decision you make, sometimes daily, to stop asking your bank balance a question it cannot answer. You can be financially responsible and still be run entirely by fear. You can have very little and still, like Tarek, carry no fear at all. The number was never the variable that mattered. So tonight, before you sleep, here is what you can actually do. 3 small things. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that requires you to give away a single warehouse. First, name your number. Not the number you'll never reach, the moving target that grows the moment you approach it, but an honest number, specific and real, that would represent enough for the life you actually live. Write it down. Most people who fear money have never once let themselves name what enough would look like, because as long as the number stays vague, the fear stays permanent. Second, notice your hand on the key. For 1 full day, pay attention to the moments you check your balance, refresh an app, compare yourself to someone else's number. Don't judge it, just notice it, the way Devarim finally noticed his own hand reaching for the strongbox in empty rooms. Awareness is the first wall that fear cannot survive. Third, before you sleep tonight, write down 3 things money cannot buy that you already own. Not as gratitude performance, not as a productivity hack, as an honest inventory of what has been quietly holding you up this whole time, unpaid and unpriced. It might be a friend who answers the phone at midnight. It might be hands that still work well enough to build something. It might be nothing more than a quiet room and a body that, tonight, is not in pain. Write them down anyway, in plain words, the way Devarim might have written a ledger entry. Except this one asks for nothing in return and never comes due. None of these 3 steps will make your bank balance different by tomorrow morning. That was never the point. Devarim's silk was still silk after the flood. Some saved, some lost. The number changed only slightly either way. What changed was the question he was asking it. You are not trying to out-earn your fear. You are trying to stop handing your fear a job it was never equipped to do. Picture Devarim now, years later, standing at the mouth of that same river at dusk, the warehouses smaller than they once seemed. The strongbox key hanging forgotten at his belt like a decoration from a costume he no longer wears. The light on the water is the color of weak tea, and for the first time in his life, he is not counting anything. In his own voice, if he could speak to you now, he might say this: I did not lose my fear by winning. I lost it by finally asking a different question than the one I had asked my whole life. I stopped asking the water for peace and started looking for it where it had been waiting, patiently, the entire time. In the noodle shop meal shared with a stranger, in his son's laugh across the table, in a night's sleep that did not depend on a number. And so to you, listening to this in whatever quiet corner of your night you found it, the water will never answer you. The balance will never whisper that you are safe. Somewhere in you, right now, there is a strongbox key you keep reaching for without noticing. Put your hand down. The peace was never behind that door. If this story gave you even 1 moment of peace, there are more waiting for you here. Next time, I'll tell you about a king who traded his crown for 1 night of sleep and what he asked for in return when he woke. Walk gently, hold loosely,